What's going on, everybody? It's Poppin', back with a season review. VBL-S Season 8 is about to wrap up soon. Within the next week here, we have the final matches being played for both of our conferences, so I got knocked out in the quarterfinals, but I wanted to take some time on making this season review, because a lot of the times I come back and I watch these and I realize that maybe there's something that I just totally forgot to mention that I had really wanted to talk about. Maybe there's one cool set that I made or one neat interaction that I noticed that I wanted to talk about and just totally blanked. So this time I actually went ahead and wrote a little script for it, so it took me a bit longer, but I really just wanted to get my thoughts on paper, but I still want to make a video, so we're doing a scripted video. So I was taking some time over the last week to make sure that I had everything here, and I think it's about as good as it's gonna get. So let's just get right into it. So my name's Poppin', and I have a problem. So I've been playing draft for a little over 2 years now, and this is every season I've ever played. Out of all the seasons I've ever played through, I managed to make playoffs every single time, with one pretty notable exception. It was this one right here, VBL-S Season 3, where I totally whiffed. I think, yeah, it was a pretty brutal season. And this season was the low point of my draft career. And when I look back on it, I kind of look back with mixed emotions. Coming out of that draft, I got this squad right here of 11 Mons, and I was higher on this team than anything else I have ever drafted. Is it Dunning-Kruger effect? Maybe. I think this was my third or fourth draft that I ever did. This team had power, it had support, it had speed control on both ends of the spectrum, and I even had some really good value low-tier Mons too. Like Slurpuff's pretty great for whatever it cost back then. And I remember the squad being ranked pretty highly in the preseason draft reviews, with focal points being on the incredible offensive pressure this team puts out. And this was back in Series 8, I think, or sometime in Sword and Shield after the Isle of Armor came out. Or no, after the Crown Tundra came out. And with all this hype and build-up, I was super confident going into the season, only just to let myself down. Through a combination of bad play and lots of bad team-building mistakes, the only thing this team got me was a nice 2-5 record. I was so frustrated with myself, and initially I was totally unsure as to why I didn't do as well as I had predicted and the power rankings had predicted. So after having some time to reflect on this season, I came to realize that a big part of this team's problem was that this team's type combination and compositions just didn't fit this format I was playing in. The defensive synergy of this team I drafted for Season 3 was almost non-existent. The net 4 weaknesses I have here aren't even really the main problem with this team, because every team you draft is going to have some net weaknesses like this. But as long as you have things to switch into those hits, you should be able to handle them. To switch in, you're either going to need something that's bulky or something that resists it, and ideally both. But this team had neither. But I mean, what can you really expect from a team with 3 normal types on it? The sheer amount of types that my team could get hit by for neutral damage was just astounding. Coupled with these Mons' less than stellar defenses, this team was dying before I was able to apply the offensive pressure that I was promised. But was there any truth to that promise? With my team of 11 Mons, you see down here, I only picked up 10 different types. And when accounting for Mons that actually dish out damage, that goes down to about 7 or 8. Like Chargebug, Persian, and Slurpuff aren't really taking any Okos. So a team with this few stab types, it could be piloted well, I'm sure, but it fundamentally faces an uphill battle. By reducing the amount of free 1.5 times multipliers available to you, you've kneecapped yourself before you even build a single set. Like, for example, on this team, the only way I could hit a grass type with stab is Chargebug. And the only way I could hit them super effectively, I think, was Marowak's Fire Punch or Cabalion's Air Slash, or a Wishy-Washy Ice Beam, which is pretty pathetic. So anyways, with the season long in the past, I've grown as a coach in terms of drafting and playing, and I actually took a championship last season. Just shout out myself. But I can't live in the past. We're living in the future now. Gen 8 is gone. It's behind us. Dynamax is dead and gone in the grave. And terrestrialization is here, and the entire game has fundamentally changed. So, going into this season of draft, I was admittedly pretty unprepared. I played a little bit on the day 1 ladder back before we knew what the format was going to be, when the Ruin Mons and Flutterbane were tearing it up. And then when the real format got announced, I actually pulled it. I played 8 games of the real format before we went into this draft. And that's my record right there. Pretty subpar. I tried to find it. It was some team with an Assault Vest, Glamora, Farigiraf, and I think like a Murkrow and something else. Honestly, it might have even been in the format with the Ruined Mons. It might have had a Chi-Yu on it. Because I asked in the Discord, and nobody could find this team that I talked about, so who knows what I was doing. But I knew there was a couple things that I wanted to try. I had a sneaky suspicion that this season was going to be an absolute winner, back-to-back. The only thing I knew going in was that I wanted to draft Golden Go, powerful offensive mons, and I wanted to prioritize new fun stuff. So the plan was to get the fun mons and make them the stars of the show, and having the less fun mons kind of, play the support roles. Like, nobody's excited for Talonflame. It's been around for 10 years, spanning Priority Tailwind and Priority Bravebird. It's not that exciting. So I wanted to pick the solid mons that aren't so exciting to be the backups to support the Gen 9 mons. So Golden Go Talonflame sounds pretty good. Gargan Echo, loved it. It was part of my in-game team. It put in so much work. I was super under-leveled throughout the main game. I just salt-cured my way to victory. And I wanted to try it out in draft. And this was back before there were regionals and stuff, so people hadn't really seen what Gargan Echo was really capable of. I was mainly just picking it because it was good in it was good in singles, and it kind of seemed like a cooler Regirock, which is a mod that I've drafted before and that I really love. Other stuff that I wanted to draft was some of the slow Trick Room stuff. I wanted to give Garandebo another shot. I talked about this in my draft review the last time I mentioned this. I believed in this mod. I've always thought it would work in draft. Except last time I had it, it was back in VBL-N Season 2, which had the entire National Dex with Mega Evolution. And who would have guessed? It got totally overshadowed in that. So it got brought to a game or two and then just left on the bench. This time I thought it would possibly have a new life. It could be its time to shine. It has Crabhammer in its move pool and that amazing Ice and Fighting Stab combo. So that right there, I smell a perfect Terra candidate. Turn that abysmal defensive typing into an amazing one, and game Stab on the best physical water move after Fish's Rend. Sound like a good plan to me. So I just needed some other picks to help fulfill the Trick Room mode. Slowbro, obviously, and Serena, those are both good, bulky options to set Trick Room and support the team by protecting us from priority. And I had two super value picks that I really wanted to get. Flamingo and Take a Ton, which unfortunately was picked immediately the second the draft started, and it ended up leaving Flamingo behind. So if Tinkaton maybe hadn't gotten picked so early, maybe I would have waited a little bit on Flamingo. But anyways, I saw the value picks going right off the bat, so I panicked. I picked the bird. I did get to make pretty good use of Flamingo for a 3-point mon, so definitely not a loss. But as I was drafting, I had this kind of nagging voice in the back of my head, just remember the type chart. Remember the type chart. Don't get distracted with all the new fun stuff. But I just promptly ignored it. So, since this was the first generation and first draft for terrestrialization, I had a pretty simple thought process behind it. If my team doesn't have mons of a certain type, I'll just do it myself. Like, my Haxorus was Terra Ground most weeks and just ran Earthquake, and I just nicknamed it Garchomp at home, and just kind of tells the whole story right there. So the thing that I thought would kind of help with that is that I didn't understand how difficult Terra Blast would be to fit on a moveset. For all the potential that this move has, this set right here, I think it was week 5 with my Gargan Echo, this was the only time I brought Terra Blast in the entire season, and I didn't even end up clicking it. Having an 80 base power stab move is great, but it's about the right power level for a move to be totally balanced, especially because it can swap to physical once you terrestrialize. It's just awesome, but the opportunity cost of running this move is way higher than I ever thought it would be. I think unless you absolutely need Terra Blast for coverage, or you need it to take out a key threat in the matchup or flip it, it's super difficult to fit Terra Blast on a moveset. Unless you're terrestrializing, it's essentially having an empty move slot. Unless you are a normal type mon with high special attack. Terra Blast goes from a weird kind of niche option to one of the best normal stab moves available. There's only a few good normal special moves that are universally as good as Terra Blast. Like, this is the list of highest damage special normal moves. Hyper Beam, huge drawbacks. Boom Burst is even questionable because you just nuke your teammate too. Techno Blast, never usable in VGC. Ring Out, I don't even think this move exists anymore. Judgment, never usable in VGC. Hyper Voice, now we have some actual competition. And then we have Terra Blast. But honestly, like, even though Hyper Voice is the most direct comparison, since it's a spread move, you trade off with dealing damage to 2 different mons, but its base power goes from 90 down to 67. You do have to play with that power trade-off. And honestly, if I were running any of these mons here, because I think most of these actually do learn Hyper Voice as well, I would just run both. it's totally a totally viable option. So honestly, unless a Mon meets those criteria above, just, you know, needing it to have coverage, needing it to flip a matchup, or just being one of these 5+ Sylveon Mons that actually make good use of it, you probably should stay away from Terra Blast. And you can kind of see this in my team comp this season. I didn't even see it used against me too many times, except for in the final match I played against Canner with his Pyroar. But hey, look at that. Pyroar is one of those elusive Mons with over base 100 special attack. That is a normal type, and it also ran Hyper Voice. So a lot of the time, you just have better things to do with your move slots, and moral of the story is just Terra Blast won't save you. So any team that makes the playoffs has to have something right going on for it, and I really did enjoy building and playing with this team, but there were definitely a few weak points that I noticed and wanted to talk about in this review. I think a lot of this kind of came from the fact of my hypothesis that, you know, Terra will fix all my problems. So obviously the biggest and first thing I noticed was the lack of ground stab, and that's kind of a problem with this format in general. There's no good ground types besides Garchomp, really. With this super potent offensive type, I really miss the power that I've had in the past on some of my other teams. Like, for example, last season, my ground type, which I just drafted to check a box, was Alolan Dugtrio, which is a Mon that I think wins the award for the biggest piece of shit that's ever been on a championship team. It was weak, it was frail, it doesn't get a stab move over 100 base power, and Earthquake doesn't count because it's a spread move. But what it did have is it gave me a simple threat that helped me in certain matchups. 100 base attack doesn't get you that far, but with an unconditional stab high horsepower, it's just barely enough to secure some KOs, especially if you slap a choice band on it. The name of this game is Multipliers. Having a team with wide enough coverage options to secure the unconditional stab on Mons is truly the name of the game, which is something that I thought I could shore up with Terra, but only having it once per game just makes it way harder than I had expected it ever would have been. And I know in a lot of people's draft reviews, they kind of mentioned similar things about Terra being used to shore up the type charts and cover for things that they just didn't have. But I remember watching Jace's review, and they pointed out how they thought the typing mattered more than ever this season, if I'm remembering that right. And seeing how Jace is now in the finals, I think that's the right idea. Typing actually matters more than ever. So looking at this was my on my little type helper. This is my team. These are the best offensive types into my team. These are the best defensive types into my team. So I think in this new Terra world we currently live in, the team that has the widest possible threat bubble to handle as many different Terra options as possible is going to get you the farthest, as well as getting a super incredible variety of these triple stab combos, which I didn't show in here, but you can put an opposing team in here, and this is a little shameless plug. You can put your team you're matching up against in here, and switch this tab from the best single offensive type to the best the best type combo and the best type triple. And if you have Mons with good types to just cover a wide array of stuff, you can make good use of Terra to get 3 stabs and just hit everything on your opponent's team for that. And that's what I thought I would do. I thought I would just perfectly have a massive brain, play around my opponent's moves and their terrestrializations, but honestly, nobody actually plays like that, aside from maybe Tay. And my team just had some fundamental issues hitting certain types with a lack of stab moves. So, like, for example, hitting Ghost type with stab, my only option is Golden Go. Nothing else can do it. Steel, Flamingo, Talonflame, but that sucks offensively, and the Crab. You can see here, obviously, some of the better defensive types are up here. Ice is down here because it's the worst. So my team just had fundamental issues, and my overarching lesson that I learned from this season, my thesis, or whatever I would want to summarize this with, is that yes, typing does still matter, as much as I hoped it wouldn't. So with this context given, I want to go a bit deeper into some of the Mons I drafted, and how they performed, and what they taught me about draft in this format. And there's really no way to tell the story without mentioning my most brought Mon, my kill leader, and my round 1 pick, which was Golden Go. Oops, 1 second here. It's a good thing I paused right there, because a little bit after I did, you could hear gunshots or fireworks. It was honestly kind of questionable which one it was. So, carrying on. So we have Golden Go, which... at the time of the draft, Golden Go was kind of looking to be a super dominant force in the metagame. Oh, there's another one. Okay, those are fireworks then. Make It Rain is an absolutely unfair move. And not to mention that it's coming off of base 133 special attack. And don't even think about making this thing go Terra Steel, then the damage just goes off the charts. So Golden Go played the role of a speedy attacker for me most games this season, typically investing heavily in specialty attack with a boosting nature, and then I would usually pair it with Tailwind from Talonflame, and from there it typically outsped everything on your opponent's team, even Scarfers. So if I run Timid Golden Go, they have to have 128 base speed and be Scarfed to outrun me in Tailwind, or if I'm running Modest, they have to have 112 with a Scarf to outspeed me. So 84 speed definitely gets the job done. And seriously, just Make It Rain is such an insane move, dude. Stronger than stronger than the gold standard of special steel moves, Flash Cannon, and then it just hits the other enemy for free. And if it's not crazy enough, the fact that you only drop by one special attack is bonkers. If you hit an enemy for a neutral hit and a resisted hit, you're doing more damage than Draco Meteor. You get punished less for protects. Oh no, you get punished less just for even using it. And it's so easy to play around Protect too, because you just hit both of them. You just click the spread move and turn your brain off. But if you want to be a more intellectual Golden Joseph player, you can also use moves that make you pick your target. You can choose who to hit with Shadow Ball, which is super hard to resist, or you can choose who to hit with Focus Blast, which is impossible to hit. But with those three moves, you have perfect coverage and you have stab on two of them, and if you want to rationalize, you can get stab on all three. Golden Go's offensive output is just absolutely insane, and if you want to play the long game, it can do that too. You can run a set with Nasty Plot, and you can just spend 2 turns to kill both things on the enemy's field, and it just totally works out like that. Or you can just use Make It Rain twice and kill 2 things in 2 turns also. But you can also, if you don't want to do that, go ahead and run Recover and Protect. Super viable. This mon being completely immune to Taunt, Encore, Disable, essentially immune to Paralysis, and immune to Sleep it's just an evil mon. Even though the rest of the move pool isn't the best, it really has everything it needs. If you want a certain coverage for a specific team, it usually has the option for you. It's like 1 week versus your boy. This was the same week as I had that Terra Fairy Gargan Echo with Terra Blast earlier. I also made this a Fairy type, terrestrialize into Fairy type, use Dazzling Gleam, and just smash through your boy's team. And there's even some sets that I had wanted to try with Golden Go, but I never really found room for on in the given week. It has the option to run a bulky dual screen set, an offensive T-Wave user. But honestly, you know me, I like my big damage mons. I like picking up KOs, so I just slapped a choice item on it and off to the races. Like I said earlier, that 85 speed tier is pretty nice. If you put max speed Timid on this with a Scarf, it outspeeds every single mon in the format, even Electrode, by 1 point. It's perfect. It's such a trolly little speed stat. It's such an offensive demon. If you win choice specs and Tailwind, everything just drops. And is one of the few mons on my team that can actually interact with my opponent's items. Anytime I ran a choice item on it, my 4th move was gonna be Trick. This is the perfect move. And if I couldn't break past the defensive wall with my choice specs, Make It Rain. All right, here's my choice specs. Have fun doing nothing. Another thing I like to give it was the any kind of berries to boost its longevity, either by recovering its health with the one of the pinch berries, or just preventing the damage in the first place with the resist berry. I think I ran Akka on this twice. As a mon as deceptively bulky as Golden Go, like look at these: 103 effective defense, 99 effective special defense. That's above average. Yeah, this thing is just never going down. A simple 25% heal or a 33% heal or just a super effective mitigation turns a lot of 2-hit KOs into 3-hit KOs, which you don't want to be playing against Golden Go for any extra turns than you really need to be. So Golden Go was a foundational mon on my team, and I really felt it in my opponent's team building. There were tons of sucker punches, random fire moves, and Earthquake. So yeah, he truly met and exceeded all my expectations. But if you really want to talk about being the bedrock of the team, if you really want to talk about being foundational, the base of the pyramid, we've got to talk about Gargan Echo. So Gargan Echo was the 3rd mon that I drafted, and when we did the draft, it was right around the start of tournaments and stuff. People hadn't really had their eyes opened to the immaculate creation that is Big Garg. This thing is an absolute monster in singles and doubles, and I hate to say it, but I think this is my favorite mon from Gen 9. It's just so fucking cool. It's got a cute little chemistry name in there, and it's a slow tanky mon that deals insane damage and just never fucking dies. Stall's always been a pet favorite playstyle of mine. I know. Ever since Gen 6 Mega Sableye, which I think was a beast. And I've played with it a bit in draft in the past. If you look at last season, I had my Quagsire, which would just use Unaware, set up Curse, and never die. I had my Gastrodon in Season 5. But after using Gargan Echo, I don't think I'll ever be able to go back. This thing has insane bulk, reliable recovery, and the best part of it all is Salt Cure. Gargan Echo got 15 kills this season, and all 15 of them were from Salt Cure. I was shook by how few teams actually brought Covert Cloak or Substitute into games against me. Their mons were just all free salt bait. It was awesome. If I were playing Gargan Echo, or if I was going up against a Gargan Echo, I'd be slapping Substitute on every mon that had an extra move slot, a Cloak on the mon that didn't have it. It's just so overtuned, it's fucking crazy. 1/8 of your HP for free, or if you are going up against one of the two strongest, or well, like 2 of the 3 strongest types in the game, you get a quarter just for free. As simple as the Gargan Echo sets were that I ran, it's I can't believe how effective they were. I usually ran Salt Cure, Recover, Protect, +1, and there were so many different things I could have done, but I just didn't. I brought an offensive Gargan Echo 1 week with the Terra Blast like I showed earlier, and I kept trying to find a week to do Terra Normal Explosion Choice Band Gargan Echo, but I always wimped out at the last second. Right going up to the match, I'd always change it in Team Builder and change it to PowerPoint too. So that's another thing that I could have possibly done with Gargan Echo. Kind of in that same vein, I only ever ran Purifying Salt, but Clear Body is still one of the best abilities you can possibly ask for. But usually the Gargan Echo that I ended up bringing act as kind of the cleanup crew, right? You start the match with Golden Go, Haxor is blasting stuff with powerful moves, and once they're softened up, slap them with Salt Cure, whittle them away, and just protect on them until everything dies. This usually meant my Gargan Echo was run with lefties and maxed HP, usually enough SPDF to live some relevant hit and then just dump the rest into defense. I did run Psychic Seed into the Indeedee team, and that was awesome. It made it even more impossible to kill, especially because that was a sand team, so I had the extra special defense boost. So I don't think Gargan Echo died either of the 2 games against that team. And on top of that, Gargan Echo is one of the best abusers of terrestrialization. And not just on my team, like in the entire game, across singles and doubles. Like Rock type always, it just sucks, right? It's not good defensively, that's not news to anybody, but the fact that it can have success as a Rock type, but also it can just suddenly not be a Rock type, just shows how fucking scary this thing is when it's actually in a good defensive type. I brought it 7 weeks with 6 different Terra types. All of them were significant upgrades from the Rock type. The only type I used twice was Poison because it has really good synergy with just the Rock. Switching from Rock into a Poison type is super, super good, especially if you know there's no good ground type on the opposing team. And I will say, I brought Terra Poison Gargan Echo like the week before that guy won that one tournament with the Terra Poison Gargan Echo in the Max Caliber. So yeah, I'm sure he watched my video, saw it, and realized that it was the optimal Gargan Echo set. So I'd like to credit for that eventually. Honestly, I had so much fun clicking the silly salt move, but playing against Gargan Echo is probably the worst experience that you can ever have in a video game. So I'm definitely considering drafting it again next season, so I just don't ever have to experience it. If there was a single downside to Gargan Echo that I ever ran into, was that I did fail 1 Salt Cure. The Bronzong on the Sand team had Covert Cloak, and I only got taunted once. But the only thing that sucked about Gargan Echo was just how slow it is. Like 35 speed, yeah, obviously you have to give something for these other amazing stats. But as bulky as it is, it plays well into that, you know, it can live the hits, but sometimes I was just 1 recover or 1 Salt Cure away from winning, and I just wasn't able to get there in time. So, and this is my segue to talk about Trick Room. Gargan Echo in Trick Room is a whole other beast, right? This thing is the fastest one on the field almost 100% of the time. It has no faults. It is the ideal life form. It can salt you before you sub up. It can recover before you taunt it. It just makes you want to quit out the game even faster. So on this team, I only had, oops, oh shit, are these out of order? Oh my goodness, what a goober I am. There we go. This is the Slowbro Slide. So I only had 1 Trick Room setter on my team this season, but it's one of the best Trick Room setters I've ever drafted, and one of the best ones in the format too. It really stood, it mainly served to act as a flex option in Game 2. I wasn't bringing very many hard Trick Room teams this season. I didn't have the best Trick Room options for it. The best one was Garandebo. And Gargan Echo, while it loves to play in Trick Room, where those extra turns really help, it's not like what do you call, like a Scavalier, right, where you're just wrecking teams in Trick Room, or what's that thing, Stack Attacka. I drafted that. I should probably know its name. Yeah, so it really, I usually ended up bringing Slowbro as kind of a flex option for speed control, and it is a nice team support even without being too flashy. So Slowbro has the bulk to live for a really long time, and even though I never brought Slack off a single time, which is kind of out of character for me, I love healing moves. Last season, me rolling in my grave, fucking brought healing moves every single time I possibly could. Slowbro mainly just sat on the field, spent his time flipping speed around and spamming Hydro Pump into frail fast mons that it suddenly outspeeds the next turn. I think it's a really good mod, honestly, and it really gets a shine in the draft setting because it's never going to be picked on ladder. I don't think Slowbro does anything particularly good, and whatever niche it has isn't good enough to be used on like a ladder or tournament team, but it's so consistently solid in draft. Yeah, Slowbro's awesome. And it has one of those things, right, where it's gifted with like the incredible Gen 1 move pool. Like, why does Slowbro learn Fire Blast? How does it cause an earthquake? I asked those questions to myself when I was team building and looking at the crazy options it has. And if I had more weeks to use this team, I really wanted to use Slowbro as a Trick Room attacker alongside being a Trick Room setter. Like, it could have been something like Spritzy in Little Cup. Obviously not Spritzy in a full format where it had to go full stall, but could have functioned like a Little Cup Spritzy, Stack Attacka, which is even more of a stretch. It's just incredible roll compression if it were to be a Trick Room attacker, and it just really helps to limit counterplay by having that oblivious ability so you can't taunt me. I actually ended up bringing Slowbro 7 out of my 8 weeks, since its flexible speed control was so nice. Even though I didn't rely on Trick Room to win the majority of my games, having the option and threat of being able to set up the Trick Room is something that I always like to have as an available option on draft squad of 6 that I bring to any league. Speed control is paramount to any draft and any team that you bring, and Slowbro is one half of that equation, but my team didn't use Trick Room as its primary mode. As I said before, it was mainly a flex option, but my team was much, much more suited for using Tailwind. So that is where we get to Talonflame. I've always been a fan of Tailwind, right? I never really played doubles before Generation 8, so I only know VGC with dynamic speed, but that's why I love Tailwind. It's really predictable, it might be kind of cliche, but god damn is it effective, and I love it. I can't even count how many times I've led with just a Tailwind mon plus either a support mon to get the Tailwind up, or an offensive mon to just get the most out of it. I do it, it's like my bread and butter. The ability to totally ruin my opponent's speed tiers without giving them a chance to react is so valuable. Especially paired with offensively threatening mons like Golden Go, it can just turn the battle up completely on its head on turn 1. And Series 1, which was what this format was, I really only had 2 options if I wanted priority Tailwind, and Mirko got picked a little bit before my second pick, so I was left with the big old dumb bird spam bot from Gen 6. It's a VGC classic, like I said earlier, wreaking havoc for 10 years plus. Or so I've heard, I didn't play back then. Even though Gale Wings got nerfed, it's still pretty good, right? It still shows up in tournaments. And even though it might not be as good as it was in Gen 6, it is super good on draft. And I was actually looking at it, Talonflame is the only mon in like the VBL server where all 3 of its stages have won championships. I don't know when Fletchinder and Fletchling won, but I looked at it and they won some seasons back in Gen 8. Talonflame does have a pretty significant niche over Murkrow, which we are kind of seeing now on ladder and tournament where it's actually showing up. And a lot of that niche comes to priority Brave Bird, which is crazy. It also has Feint and Will-O-Wisp, but Brave Bird and Will-O-Wisp are the 2 big ones, which gives it more offensive openings for the team. And this season, that's pretty much exactly what Talonflame did. It was my most common lead. I usually sent it in and set up Tailwind, and then I tried to do one more thing before it died. Its crazy speed stat lets it get off another move post Gale Wings, even if my opponent matches my Tailwind. So I usually get to click 2 things unless they double it up on the first turn. But in that case, I have a Tailwind up with an offensive mon on my side of the field, and then I get to bring in another powerhouse. So it's a win-win situation if they KO Talonflame turn 1. Despite all this, my sad Talonflame only picked up a single KO in this entire season. But that mainly talks about my team and how I used it more than about Talonflame itself. Like, I think before the playoffs, Steve's Talonflame was like number 35 in kills. And mine was bottom 3 by differential, which was the lowest win percent mon on my team, which was like 22% relative to my team win rate of exactly 50. It may have underperformed compared to the rest of my team. I think that reflects more on me than the mon itself. I think I just probably used it in kind of a throwaway role that it maybe wasn't suited for. Especially considering that Talonflame is pretty easy to prep for, especially when I bring it as a lead with a standard set almost every week. There's lots of other things I could have done with Talonflame that I wanted to do. If I had infinite weeks, I would have done. I really considered bringing bulky flame body Talonflame. It has a super good niche. It's just because Fire Flying is a deceptively good typing as long as you dodge the rock slides right. And I was really considering it bringing to the quarterfinals with that flame body set because it has good matchup into Heracross and Bisharp, and it could be pretty good against Dondozo and okay against Tatsugiri. But honestly, I ended up going back to Gale Wings because Scarf Tatsugiri is just probably its best set, and it gets outspeed by that, so I gotta kind of go Gale Wings. And Dondozo ended up running Water Veil, so it couldn't get burned, and that would just would have been too much for you to deal with. So ultimately, ended up being the right call not to bring Flame Body, but I don't know. I still think it has a good niche. Although, one thing I did find myself working against with Talonflame was investing super heavily in Fake Out prevention. Because that's obviously the best way to play around Talonflame. You stop the Tailwind turn 1, you break the Gale Wings, and it's just a shit mon from there on out. It's just a worse Kilowattrel from there. So, I just went ahead and picked up a mon that would just totally block Fake Out. But funny enough, I didn't get hit by a single Fake Out this entire season. So, all my movesets and ways of blocking it were just totally wasted. But I didn't actually feel that anywhere more than my usage of, my lack of usage of Serena. So, where are we? So I drafted Serena as a bulky grass type with insane amounts of passive utility. I really think passive utility are the key to winning a draft. So this insane passive priority protection, something like Spritzy's passive taunt protection, those are super good abilities that you always want to have on your team. But I think its priority protection wasn't as valuable as it was back in Sword and Shield, just because there's so many fewer mons with Fake Out. The only two teams that had good mons that were likely to bring Fake Out were Grimmsnarl and Tinkaton. And when I played Braff, Grimmsnarl didn't have it. And when I played Bohm, his Tinkaton never even had to hit the field before he destroyed me. So Serena was usually hanging out on the bench, not really blocking anything. And I actually don't think it blocked a single priority move ever. Not even just it didn't block Fake Out. I don't think it blocked anything. But maybe that's just me forgetting to remember it. Or survivorship bias because they didn't even bother to bring the priority moves against me because they knew I had Serena. We'll never know. So the thing that mainly bummed me out about Serena though was that this thing has a teeny tiny move pool. It doesn't seem that bad. It just has like no type coverage. It learns good moves of 3 types: Grass, Fairy, and Fighting. Poison resists all 3, and 3 other types resist 2 out of those 3. So if I was going to use it offensively, I would end up needing Terra Blast for coverage, and I already talked about how I grew to feel about Terra Blast. If this format had more priority, I'm sure this would, or if Serena had more moves, I'm sure that this thing would have done so much more work for me. Like Triple Axial was such a blessing. I will say that even though I don't think I maximized Serena's value, it's definitely a really good mon. Base 120 attack really stings, even when uninvested, especially when you pair it with a base 120 power move in Power Whip. But I didn't use Serena too often outside of its role preventing Fake Out and other priority spam. But I do want to give a special shout out to the Serena I brought in the quarterfinals, where it bravely fought and beat the Sushi combo in Game 2. It has all the tools to beat that particular pair, right? I can use Charm to drop Dozo's attack faster than it can raise it. I have the perfect grass type to deal with Wave Crash and Earthquake. And if I just tear into a Fairy type, I just also don't ever get hit by Order Up. And then I can just Oko Tatsugiri with Play Rough when it pops out. So it had a great final showing, went out with a bang, but I don't want to talk about Heracross into that matchup. That was kind of brutal. So the last 2 mons that I brought a decent amount of times were just pretty much there to kill things, right? I usually plan to take advantage of my speed control partner with them and then just start chunking away at stuff. So Haxus was my fast mode friend and Crabominal was my slow mode buddy. So starting off in the fast mode, since I ran that more often, Haxus was my go-to mon to try to break opposing teams, and I typically ran it with Terra Ground, so it could pretend to be a Garchomp and spam Earthquake and Dragon Claw into teams that didn't prep against Garchomp. And arguably, this is a hot take, it might be better than Garchomp when it does this. And the reason for that is that Garchomp's abilities just suck. Right? Crazy to say. Like, Garchomp is a goated Pokemon. It's one of the best, most consistent mons of all time. And it's one of the best mons in this generation, but its two abilities just don't really do anything, at least in doubles. But imagine if Garchomp could smack Rotom with Earthquake. Now that'd be terrifying. And what if you couldn't live its Dragon Claw with your Habanberry? That'd be spooky. And these are just the tip of what Hackers can do. Obviously, it's not as fast as Garchomp, and it has to go to do Terra Ground to deal real damage with ground moves, but it's a passable imitation. This power is absolutely outstanding. But it's really limited by its lack of good stab, unless it terrestrializes. Dragon's like a good neutral type, but unfortunately, the two best Terra types, Steel and Fairy, just totally shut down Mono Dragon. So having to have effective, powerful coverage, you really need to Terra to have effective, powerful coverage, you need to terrestrialize this thing to just totally avoid getting blanked by super common Terra options. So Paxos did make great use of it itself. It was always a great Terra candidate, but I typically was only using the Terra offensively, mainly into ground. And I think the most effective Terras are those that you can use offensively and defensively. And I think the best example of that on my team was the other big attacker I was talking about, Garandebo. So everything I'm going to say about Garandebo, take it with a grain of salt. I only brought this thing to 3 games, so a lot of this is like theoretical and hypothetical, but honestly, nothing sounds better in the team builder than a Terra Water Garandebo. I'll be honest, Garandebo is a super flawed mon. It has some of the highest peaks and lowest valleys of any mon I've ever drafted, and it all comes down to its typing and its moves. Ice Fighting is one of the most cracked offensive combos possible. If you plot it against every Pokemon, it is a top 4 type. A top 4 attacking type combo. And not only that, it has incredibly good attacks off of each type that are boosted by Iron Fist. So even better, or if you're running into Intimidate team, just run Hyper Cutter and you get to attack at full power. But Garandebo is, you can look at its stats, it's not that bulky, right? Its physical bulk is like average, its special is below average, and doesn't really help that fighting in ice while being amazing offensively is just dog shit defensively. It's a bottom 10 defensive type. This thing's life only gets harder given the fact that it's so slow. It needs Trick Room to work, but even in Trick Room, it's not the slowest thing on the field, so it needs to get turn a Trick Room up and use Ice Hammer or Hammer Arm to drop its speed by 1, and then it'll be going first, and then it'll be popping off. So you have to work incredibly hard to get this thing to actually be in its prime. But honestly, once you meet those conditions, this thing just goes crazy. It deals so much damage to your opponents, and it's so hard to resist. But, you know, what if there was a way to make this mon better? What if there was a way to swap it to a better defensive type that has great synergy with its current type and gain stab on Crab Hammer? Now that's a hell of a mon. I will say, though, I never actually terrestrialized Garandebo, but it was a good thought. The last 2 mons I'm going to talk about are just the Dunsparce. This thing is super, super good. It has a crazy move pool, great stats, good abilities, but I didn't really end up using it much. I only brought it 2 weeks, and they were both kind of cheesy sets I ran. Like, I ran the Rattled Weakness Policy set 1 week, and then I just ran Serene Grace and spammed Rock Slide another week, which was, I had to take a shower after that one. That did not feel good. But honestly, I didn't even scratch the surface of what this thing can do. I'm not going to talk much more about it. I don't have much else to say, but I will definitely be considering this thing in the future. And lastly, we have Flamingo, my sweet, beautiful round 2 pick. And I really do think this mon is good. It has good move pool, good stats, but it competes really, really hard with Talonflame for a team slot. It has some of the same utility, being a decently fast Tailwind setter. It has the same offensive, well, Fire and Fighting are similar enough to where they kind of overlap a lot. So Flying and Fighting, Flying and Fire, I'll pick the faster mod, right? But, so Talonflame's kind of tough, Flamingo's kind of tough because you want to use it into teams with Ghost types, teams with Intimidate, so you can get used to Scrappy, or you want to do some cheesy stuff with Co-Star. But my team didn't really have the ability to capitalize on Co-Star too much. If I had more setup sweepers, something like a Shell Smash mon, or something with Belly Drum that's not Slowbro, or maybe something with Shift Gear, that would be a dangerous set. Something like Flamingo next to the car, so you can Shift Gear, switch in Flamingo, get the boosts. You can dissuade Earthquakes because you're a flying type, obviously. A team like that is the perfect spot for Flamingo. But like I said earlier, I panicked. I wanted to try this mon out, so I got it round 2. And you know, I brought it to 3 games. It did a decent job. I love my beautiful bird right here. He's going to be in my heart for a long time. So, finishing up here, just look at the stats for my team. A couple things I wanted to call out were just my Golden Go here. He is the kill leader for the team and the entire conference pre-playoffs. I don't want to talk about how I did in playoffs. I could have kept going so much further with it, or maybe kept it at the top of the kills for the conference if I hadn't totally just biffed it against Canner, which isn't the first time he stumps me in the playoffs. Gargan Echo got less, surprisingly way less kills than I thought it had gotten. Just based off of how much damage it did and how oppressive Salt Cure is, but I guess it makes sense, right? The Salt Cure damage ticks at the end of the turn, so it would soften things up for teammates to get the KOs before it could get the credit. Gargan Echo is a selfless mod, right? But it did have the best KD ratio out of everything on my team. 2.5 is pretty nutty, because that also makes sense, right? Its whole shtick is just to never die. So, yeah, Gargan Echo is great. It also had one of the better win percents on my team, because it's also a great mod. Slowbro ended up with the best win percentage of my team of 0.7. Like I said, I think that flex trick room option is super valuable. And very disappointing, right here on the bottom, we have Talonflame with a -8 differential, 1 KO in the last week, and I basically forced that because it had no kills coming into the playoffs. Yeah, there's definitely a way to use Talonflame better than I did this season. I wasn't too hyped about drafting it. It was just going to be the Tailwind bot, and it was the Tailwind bot, but I mean, a Tailwind bot does not make an MVP with a nice 22% win rate. Ugh, how atrocious. Lastly, I'm just going to rate this team. I would rate this, it had an 8 out of 10 for power, a 7 out of 10 for support, a 4 out of 10 for flexibility, a 10 out of 11 for bringability. Sorry, Vigoroth, you did not make the cut. And I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10 for fun. So, that was this team. Super fun season. I'm really glad we're in Gen 9 now. Lots of cool new stuff to try out. And I'm super excited for next season. I really hope we get it kicked off soon. I know finals are this week, so we should probably have finals, the ceremonial grand finals, and then a couple weeks of farting around, but we'll be back soon. We'll be better than ever. And I forgot to put in my little picture of what my little teaser is going to be. Let me do that real quick. Okay, here we go. Ooh, what could this possibly be foreshadowing? I don't know. I'll see you next season in VBL. Season 9. Thanks for watching, everybody. Let me know in the comments if you made it this long what you're going to be drafting next season. Peace out.